paying attention at
yeah.
all to 3i Atlas? Are you watching
there's the comet?
Yeah, whatever it is.
It'll be a very sort of heavy spaceship if you make it all out of nickel.
Oh, yeah. Huge. The size of Manhattan and all nickel? That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's a heavy spaceship.
That's a real problem if it hits.
Yes.
In early 2025, NASA scientists reportedly intercepted something so strange while tracking the interstellar object 3i Atlas that it sent shockwaves through the agency. Within days, a private conversation between Elon Musk and a senior NASA insider was leaked, and what Musk said left even veteran astronomers speechless.
No, it would like obliterate a continent type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe worse.
Yeah, probably kill most of human life.
Before the leak could be contained, word spread that Jeff Bezos had quietly funneled millions into a secret telescope project aimed directly at 3i Atlas. What they found changed everything. Elon Musk's secret plan to meet the stranger. It was July 1st, 2025, when 3i Atlas first came into the observable universe. With a speed of 130,000 miles per hour, it was faster than a commercial airplane flying at about 500 to 600 miles per hour. This incredible speed meant Earth had a very short window to study it. Soon it would be gone, probably forever, and just be a faint memory in the vastness of space. While scientists around the world dropped everything to study it, little did anyone know that the richest people on Earth, with the power and money to make things happen quickly, were also paying very close attention.
Like, how do we, get this message across? Hey, really cool stuff's happening, tune in.
And the first one to act, as he often is, was Elon Musk. As telescopes turned skyward, Musk was said to have ordered his engineers to turn SpaceX's attention toward Atlas. His top engineers were tasked to run computer models of the object's shape, using the limited brightness data NASA had shared publicly. The simulation suggested something unusual. There was a symmetrical, possibly elongated structure with an empty cavity at its center. The conclusion was impossible to ignore. 3i Atlas didn't behave like a rock. It behaved like a shell. Publicly, NASA called it a fragment of an alien comet, likely broken off from a dying system billions of years ago. But an internal memo leaked weeks later hinted at a more cautious tone. It warned that 3i Atlas may represent artificial debris of interstellar origin.
3i Atlas comes back into view. Right now, it is hidden behind the sun, and during its closest approach, Earth-based telescopes are not going to be able to see it. What's worse,
the document never reached the press in full, but one line stood out. If confirmed, this would imply technological activity beyond our system. By mid-July, NASA's Planetary Defense Office formed a special task force to monitor 3i Atlas continuously. Radar scans, spectral analyses, and deep space tracking were all redirected toward it. Yet even as NASA prepared to study it carefully, Elon Musk saw hesitation as a threat. The object was drifting closer every day, and by the time committees decided on a mission, it might already be gone. He told one SpaceX advisor privately that waiting for permission meant losing history. And so, while NASA debated its next step, Musk began planning one of his own. The mission began at Vandenberg Space Force Base, under the public label of a regular Starlink satellite launch. On the surface, nothing appeared unusual. The Falcon 9 rocket went through its standard procedures, lifted off into the night sky, and carried what most believed was another batch of communication satellites. In reality, this was only part of the truth. Inside the manifest was a second, unlisted objective that only a small circle within SpaceX understood. After stage separation, the Falcon 9's reusable first stage completed its planned trajectory and began its automated return to Earth for recovery, just as it would during any commercial mission. The second stage, however, continued beyond standard orbital altitude. It reignited quietly, using a pre-programmed sequence that had been written into its navigation software days before the launch.
As dark comets would not need to release dust, as they were simply reconfiguring their structures and releasing the pockets of invisible gas.
That second ignition pushed the vehicle far beyond the range of typical Starlink orbits. It performed a long, controlled burn that changed its path entirely, slinging it out of Earth's orbit and placing it on a new trajectory toward 3i Atlas, the interstellar object that had captured global attention. Once that burn was complete, the upper stage released its hidden payload. This was not a satellite cluster. It was a small, custom-built deep space probe roughly the size of a washing machine. The probe had been assembled in secret, equipped with a dust collector, a compact radar imaging unit, a small propulsion system for course corrections, and an array of solar panels for power. It also carried one crucial feature that few outside of the Hawthorne engineering group knew about. It was programmed with a second, encrypted set of instructions that would activate automatically once separation from the Falcon upper stage was confirmed. For most SpaceX personnel monitoring the flight, the mission appeared to end normally. Telemetry reported payload separation confirmed.
This is a fairly critical operation. This is the first time this vehicle has ever flown, and we want to make sure it does not collide with the space station.
Which typically meant the delivery had been successful. In their view, the job was done. However, deep within the mission control software, another sequence quietly began. The encrypted commands switched on the probe's autonomous navigation system and radar array. From that moment, the probe operated on its own, without real-time guidance or visibility to public tracking systems. It was officially off the grid. 2 days later, as the probe reached the distant region where 3I Atlas's extended tail was believed to stretch, small disturbances began to appear in Earth's magnetic field. At first, the anomalies seemed insignificant. They were tiny shifts, easily dismissed as background fluctuations. But scientists soon noticed that these micro-variations were synchronized across multiple monitoring stations worldwide. Each signal pointed back to the same moment, the one in which the probe first approached the outskirts of the 3I Atlas trajectory. NASA's Deep Space Network antennas in Goldstone and Canberra then detected something unregistered following 3I Atlas. The object maintained a steady distance of about 800 kilometers behind it. Its trajectory did not match debris, an asteroid fragment, or any known satellite pattern. Before analysts could determine what it was, every magnetometer on Earth spiked at once. The event lasted exactly 3.141 seconds. It formed a perfectly uniform pulse that defied known natural explanations. It was not caused by solar wind, radio interference, or cosmic radiation. The timing was flawless. It matched the precise moment the probe's radar switched on to begin its first active scan. Immediately afterward, all communication from the probe ceased. The encrypted data channel went completely silent. SpaceX's internal system automatically recorded the loss as connection lost due to radiation interference. However, the timing raised suspicion among those who knew the real purpose of the mission. Musk reportedly reviewed the readings and refused to authorize any attempt at retrieval or follow-up. There was nothing to recover, as the probe was already traveling millions of kilometers away on a one-way trajectory. In his view, the mission had already succeeded. He is said to have told his senior team, "We saw enough." When NASA learned that an unregistered private probe had approached 3I Atlas, it began tracing signal echoes and analyzing the residual telemetry. What they found was impossible to dismiss. The clean mathematical pulse was too structured to be random. It looked like a deliberate reply. For the first time, scientists had to consider the possibility that 3I Atlas had responded to being scanned. That 3.141-second burst of energy soon became the most examined event in NASA's modern history. Across every space agency and research center, the same question began to surface. Had humanity just heard back from something not made by human hands? The spike that made NASA panic.
It's only the third time that we've actually detected an object that has come from beyond our solar system.
By the morning of August 2nd, 2025, every major magnetic and radio observatory on Earth had reported the same anomaly. From Alaska to Canberra, from JPL's deep space monitors to independent university labs, all instruments showed the same event, a clean, structured pulse of energy that repeated with mathematical precision. What made it terrifying was not its strength, but its order. Natural space noise is messy and scattered. This pulse was organized. It had pattern, rhythm, and intent. At NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a team of radio analysts began replaying the waveform data, trying to locate its source. The more they studied it, the stranger it became. When slowed down and plotted across multiple frequencies, the signal revealed a harmonic curve that rose and fell in perfect symmetry. Even more bizarre, that harmonic pattern reappeared every 31 minutes, almost like a repeating broadcast cycle. In technical terms, it was a self-sustaining signal, something that looked as if it had an internal clock. At first, engineers suspected an error, perhaps a calibration issue, or maybe a relay satellite had bounced back a fragment of an old signal. But the theory collapsed almost immediately. The European Space Agency's tracking stations in Spain and Australia reported seeing the exact same waveform, recorded at the same time with the same 31-minute interval. The signal came from deep space, not from Earth or from any satellite in orbit. More importantly, it was traced to the exact region where the interstellar object 3I Atlas had last been observed. This realization sent a shockwave through NASA. By midday, an emergency session was called at the Planetary Defense Coordination Office in Washington. Specialists from multiple divisions, astrophysics, radio analysis, orbital mechanics, and cybersecurity, joined the call. External physicists were brought in to rule out atmospheric interference or deliberate spoofing. Every test returned the same result. The pulse was clean. It was directed. It had no distortion, no reflected signal trails, and no human-made modulation. One analyst, staring at the repeating pattern, quietly muttered that it looked like a handshake, the kind of signal computers use to confirm connection when two systems successfully link. The description spread quickly through the room. From that moment, the event was officially labeled the handshake. Once the signal's path was confirmed to align perfectly with the last known trajectory of 3I Atlas, NASA's leadership no longer doubted what had caused it. They already knew an unregistered probe had approached the object. What they needed was proof of who had sent it. Through telemetry cross-checks and encrypted signature tracing, analysts matched the data to SpaceX's Vandenberg launch. The timing of the pulse and the activation window of the Falcon's hidden payload were identical. That finding ended the debate. NASA now had definitive confirmation that the source of the event was the SpaceX probe and that its scan of 3I Atlas had directly triggered the pulse. NASA quietly contacted SpaceX for clarification. When Elon Musk was briefed in person at Hawthorne, he reportedly listened in silence as the NASA team presented their findings. Witnesses later said he didn't deny that a probe had been launched or that it might have caused the signal. He simply looked at the waveform printout and said, "It answered." His tone made it clear that he believed the probe had made contact and that the pulse was not random at all. What terrified the NASA team most was not Musk's boldness, but the implication that something out there had replied. NASA moved quickly to contain the situation. Within 24 hours, data related to 3I Atlas was reclassified. Public magnetospheric and solar data streams were temporarily taken offline under the excuse of server maintenance. The Deep Space Network locked its archives behind restricted access keys. Amateur astronomers soon noticed missing data from observatories that had been tracking 3I Atlas daily. Behind closed doors, NASA transferred oversight of the anomaly to the Department of Defense. The case was now labeled a classified astrophysical event. Scientists involved in the analysis were instructed to cease external communication. Internal documents were scrubbed of SpaceX's name and replaced with generic references to a private launch vehicle. The truth was simple but unsettling. NASA had determined that the mysterious pulse was real, that it had originated near 3I Atlas, and that it was most likely triggered by a probe Elon Musk had ordered in secret. The Falcon mission's silent disappearance was no longer viewed as a failure. It was considered an interaction. The agency could not prove what it answered, but it was clear that something had, and that it had chosen a precise and unmistakable way to make itself known. Within 48 hours of the handshake event, NASA's deep space tracking centers reported something even more disturbing. The latest positional readings showed that 3I Atlas had slightly altered its path. The deviation was tiny, just a fraction of a degree, yet it was enough to break every existing orbital prediction. No known gravitational force or collision could explain it. The change seemed deliberate, as if the object had adjusted its own trajectory after the pulse. For the first time, scientists faced the possibility that 3I Atlas was not just responding, it was moving with intent. Inside NASA, panic spread in whispers, but outside the agency, one man was already watching. Jeff Bezos had been tracking the object through his private observation network, and when the official feeds suddenly went silent, he knew something monumental had happened. Jeff Bezos and the silent satellite. While NASA locked down its data and global observatories went dark, Jeff Bezos was already several steps ahead. Through his private network of sky tracking instruments, he had been quietly monitoring 3I Atlas since its discovery. When the object's path shifted and NASA stopped releasing updates, Bezos understood that something extraordinary had taken place. Where the world saw silence, he saw opportunity. Unlike Elon Musk's impulsive decision to chase the object with a rocket, Bezos believed patience would yield more answers. His method relied on watching rather than touching. For years, he had quietly funded a secret project within Blue Origin known as Argus, a telescope array located in a remote, high-altitude desert. Designed for long-range, high-resolution observation, it was capable of tracking deep space anomalies invisible to most public systems. Argus operated independently of any government agency, its data routed through encrypted private servers. After the handshake event, Bezos instructed his team to focus all Argus instruments on 3I Atlas, began capturing continuous spectra, light signatures that reveal chemical composition. Within days, Bezos' analysts noticed something that didn't fit any known comet or asteroid profile. The light reflected from 3I Atlas showed the formation of new, complex, long-chain molecules.
Compared to the previous best image, which was the Hubble Space Telescope image.
These compounds had not appeared in earlier readings. To the scientists, this meant the object was changing after the pulse, possibly producing new material in reaction to it. The implication was staggering. Argus detected something else as well. Beneath the normal magnetic noise, there was a faint but steady vibration, a hum that oscillated at irregular intervals, almost like a coded pattern. It wasn't a repeat of the 3.141-second pulse NASA had recorded. It was continuous, subtle, and layered, as if 3I Atlas were now transmitting on a quieter frequency. Bezos' research team spent weeks analyzing it, running mathematical models to determine whether it was random interference or structured communication. The deeper they looked, the more it resembled an intricate digital signal, buried in cosmic static. Bezos reportedly took personal control of the analysis. He had always maintained a fascination with the possibility of life beyond Earth, but this data was unlike anything he had seen. To him, the pulse that silenced Musk's probe had not been the end, it was the beginning. The object appeared to be evolving. Its new chemistry, its altered trajectory, and the emerging magnetic hum all suggested it was doing something active. Bezos began to speculate privately that 3I Atlas might not be a comet at all, but a self-repairing, possibly self-aware construct, a kind of living probe built by another intelligence. Acting on that belief, his Blue Origin engineers began designing a new tool, a small autonomous satellite built for stealth. It would shadow 3I Atlas at a safe distance, monitoring its every movement without transmitting any signal that could reveal its presence. Internally, it was called Artemis, a silent companion to Argus's watchful eye. The plan was to launch it quietly, hidden within a legitimate Blue Origin payload, so no one outside his immediate circle would ever know. Bezos wasn't trying to intercept the object like Musk, he was trying to listen to it. His goal was long-term observation and total exclusivity to gather data before the world even knew there was something to find. But when Artemis finally went online and aligned its sensors toward 3I Atlas, it detected something that changed everything: the return signal. It was in early September, several weeks after the launch of Artemis, when Jeff Bezos' private satellite detected something completely unexpected. The satellite had been silently shadowing 3I Atlas from a distance, collecting data on its magnetic field, light patterns, and temperature.
Gotten the data, and my point is that the politics of the day should not sabotage science.
For days, the readings had remained stable. Then, almost without warning, a new signal appeared. It was extremely faint, hovering at the edge of what the sensors could even detect, but it showed a pattern that was unmistakably deliberate. The transmission consisted of 3 clean pulses. Each pulse lasted exactly 3.141 seconds, the same mathematical precision recorded during the handshake event that had silenced Musk's Falcon probe weeks earlier.
SpaceX founder Elon Musk holding a news conference after today's successful launch of the Falcon Heavy rocket. Let's listen in.
After the 3 pulses came a pause. Then the sequence repeated again and again, spaced at exact, predictable intervals. At first, Bezos' research team assumed it was a signal bounce. Maybe Artemis was picking up an echo of its own transmissions, or an electromagnetic reflection off nearby solar wind. But when they analyzed the timing and frequency, the math didn't fit. The delay was too precise, and the waveform too structured to be a natural reflection. When the waveform was inverted and converted into binary code, the real shock came. The binary sequence translated into 3 fundamental mathematical constants: pi, E Euler's number, and the golden ratio. These numbers are universal. They describe the geometry of circles, the growth of living organisms, and the architecture of galaxies. In short, they are the building blocks of all mathematical and natural order. No natural cosmic process could have randomly encoded these values in perfect sequence. It was, beyond doubt, an artificial signal. Bezos was alerted within minutes. Following strict protocol, he ordered a secure quantum key link to transmit the raw data from Artemis directly to Amazon's Deep Data Lab in Arlington. There, A specialized algorithm normally used for detecting fraud and pattern manipulation in financial systems was repurposed to analyze the signal's structure. The results were shocking. The algorithm confirmed that the signal's harmonic ratios matched those found in known examples of intelligence-coded communication. In SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, this type of signal pattern is considered the gold standard for identifying messages of deliberate origin. To Bezos's team, it looked like a structured response from something, or someone, near 3I Atlas. Following the discovery, Bezos quietly decided to share the data with NASA. He wanted independent verification to ensure it wasn't an internal artifact or an instrument malfunction. The data transfer was done through encrypted channels, under strict confidentiality. But within 48 hours of that handover, Artemis's systems experienced a catastrophic breach. The satellite's remote servers were accessed through a U.S. government subnet, and the logs showed that the intrusion had root-level clearance. Every copy of the raw signal data, including backups and local archives, was systematically deleted. Only small, corrupted checksum fragments remained. Inside Artemis's command center, panic set in. The deletion appeared intentional. Bezos's engineers believed that once NASA verified the signal's structure, the information had been classified immediately, possibly by the Department of Defense. But one systems engineer acted fast. Before the purge was complete, she managed to isolate and preserve a damaged data block. It was corrupted and incomplete, but it still contained part of the original transmission. When this fragment was analyzed, what emerged was even stranger than the first discovery. When the partial data was slowed down and converted from a signal waveform into an audio file, it produced a mechanical, distorted tone that repeated rhythmically, a sound that almost resembled a broken voice. It wasn't human, and it wasn't clear enough to be words, but the pattern had cadence, modulation, and repetition, which are all features of deliberate sound production. Acoustic modeling was then performed to see if this pattern could be matched to anything known. The results left everyone in the room silent. The Artemis team found that the modulation depth, the precise way the sound's frequencies rose and fell, was identical to the last 0.3 seconds of the Falcon probe's final transmission. The same transmission Elon Musk hadn't released after the probe went dark. In simple terms, the sound from the September signal carried the same fingerprint as the Falcon's final call for contact. It was as though something inside or around the object had recorded the last moment of the Falcon's transmission, processed it, and replayed it weeks later as a reply. The frequency spacing, timing gaps, and harmonic distortion were exact matches. Statistically, the odds of this happening by random chance were virtually zero. To the scientists working under Bezos, this was the ultimate confirmation that the object was not inert. It was aware. It had received the probe's signal, understood it as an act of observation, and answered in kind. First with the universal language of numbers, then with the unmistakable voice of the machine that had touched it. When word of this filtered quietly through NASA's internal channels, a whistleblower finally stepped forward. The insider leaked a confidential note recounting what Elon Musk had privately told NASA officials after the Falcon went silent.
The launch of Crew is something that we've been working towards for 17 years.
That note and what it revealed would completely change how the world viewed both 3I Atlas and the man who had dared to reach for it. The leaked conversation. The leaked memo described a confidential review held several weeks after SpaceX's Falcon 9 probe vanished during its secret mission to intercept 3I Atlas. The meeting took place behind closed doors, with senior NASA and Department of Defense officials present. They wanted Elon Musk to explain what the probe's final data meant, the garbled telemetry, and the strange radar reflection that had appeared just before the connection was lost. According to the document, Musk presented his analysis calmly. He explained that, in its last seconds, the probe's radar had detected structured symmetry, repeating geometric patterns that were impossible to mistake for noise. The reflections showed evenly spaced intervals, the kind of regularity produced by engineered materials rather than by natural rock or ice. He compared the readings to radar returns, seen from metallic panel arrays or honeycomb-like structures, saying the object's surface had behaved more like a designed mechanism than a random body drifting through space. However, Musk was careful not to declare it artificial. He told the panel that another possibility existed. In some rare conditions, electromagnetic energy can resonate when it interacts with certain conductive or crystalline materials. This can create an echo that appears patterned, even though it's the result of complex natural physics. He described it as a resonance response, a kind of magnetic feedback loop between the probe's radar and the object's surface. It was, in his words, a reaction that feels intentional but could still be physics. The officials pressed him harder. Did he believe the probe had found something made by intelligence? Musk reportedly paused before answering. Then he said a single sentence that froze the room. "If it's natural," he said, "it's behaving like it wants to be found." That line became the most discussed part of the memo once it leaked. Some believed Musk was being poetic. Others suspected he had seen something in the data that pointed to control, perhaps a system that had adjusted its responses to the probe's scans. The memo ended with a short administrative note recommending that the Falcon telemetry remain classified until further interagency analysis could be completed. Within a week of the leak, both NASA and SpaceX quietly removed old logs, payload manifests, and frequency data related to the July launch. To most people, it was just another deep space anomaly, but in observatories across the world, several teams kept listening. Some claimed that faint electromagnetic pulses still appeared intermittently near the coordinates where 3I Atlas had last been observed. Not constant, not patterned, just there. It could be solar wind interference. It could be residual debris reflecting signals from Earth. Or, as one anonymous NASA researcher told a journalist off record, it could be something we still don't fully understand. That was all anyone could confirm. The Falcon probe remained missing. The telemetry was sealed, and 3I Atlas, the object that shouldn't exist, was still moving.
3I Atlas comes back into view. Right now, it is hidden behind the sun, and during its closest approach, Earth-based telescopes are not going to be able to see it. What's worse,
Quietly, somewhere in the constellation of Virgo, at a distance of 357,603,531.8 kilometers from Earth. The implications. No one dared voice. Inside NASA, the 3I Atlas files were sealed under a new label. Continuing observation, external origin unknown. To outsiders, it sounded routine.
we've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth.
But to the handful of researchers who had seen the raw data, the classification wasn't meant to hide a discovery, but to contain a question. If 3I Atlas wasn't a fragment of rock or ice, then what kind of object could survive interstellar travel while producing reflections consistent with metallic composition and geometric symmetry? And if the radar response wasn't feedback, what could mimic a timed echo that matched a probe's transmission down to the millisecond? None of those questions could be answered without admitting one unsettling possibility, that something out there had reacted to a human signal. Not as a living thing, not as a mind, but as an entity built to notice. That idea alone fractured the room. Some analysts argued that the anomaly was a coincidence of data compression, that the so-called mirrored pulse was an internal reflection caused by the Falcon's final transmission loop. Others weren't convinced. They pointed to the global magnetic spike that had coincided with the probe's loss. If it were a software error, why had magnetometers on Earth picked it up? By late October, most of the scientists assigned to the case were reassigned to unrelated projects. The official stance became that 3I Atlas was a naturally reflective interstellar fragment exhibiting unique spectral properties. It was a statement designed to end questions, not answer them. But in private circles, the story grew darker. Engineers who had worked on the Falcon payload claimed that SpaceX's internal archive had been scrubbed of telemetry related to the deep space stage. One former employee described an update that locked them out of the server entirely. Another said the probe's radar module had been built with technology not yet disclosed to the public. Meanwhile, independent radio astronomers continued scanning the last known coordinates. Occasionally, faint signals still appeared. None of them was strong enough to decode, but they came at odd intervals, 31 minutes apart, the same period noted in NASA's early report on the handshake event. Whether it was a coincidence or an echo, no one could say. Yet the pattern refused to vanish, as though something invisible was still responding, just beyond reach. Officially, 3I Atlas is still listed in the Minor Planet database as a hyperbolic interstellar object. Unofficially, some in the scientific community call it the mirror. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it might be reflecting. Not a signal, not a probe, but a truth. Humanity might not yet be ready to face. The mystery, for now, drifts silently, unconfirmed, unclaimed, and unresolved. And if the data was right, and if the reflection wasn't an accident, then somewhere in the vast dark between the stars, something now knows we're here. What do you think about this discovery? Comment down below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.